Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the best free hit team for Blank Gameweek 28, and there are two ways of using the chip: to be aggressive in a double game week like 29, or to use it a bit conservatively and to try to fill in all these holes you might have in your team, such as in a game week like 28 where you have so many blanks as well. So if you end up enjoying this video, be sure to drop it a like. Let's try to get this over 200, and we're also looking to push on towards 20,000 subscribers. Thank you to everyone for all the support, and let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. There might be some big omissions from this team. I'm all ears, but without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. I believe there are three goalkeepers to choose from as your main goalkeeper, and they include Kepa Arrizabalaga, who I have ultimately picked, and the others would be Raya and Nick Pope. And I think Raya will be at the bottom of that list because I think Brentford have the highest chance of conceding from those three respective goalkeepers and teams, and I think Kepa has a great chance of keeping one against Everton at home. And I've got Forster there as the backup. Remember, on a free hit, you don't necessarily need that much squad depth or have the most expensive players on your bench. It is a bit futile. You would maybe want to have one just in case someone you misses out or something else happens, and then ultimately you need that player from your bench to come on, but it rarely happens, and ultimately Kepa Arrizabalaga will play, and he has a great chance of that clean sheet. And I think Forster, from the budget options, is the best of the bunch, facing his former club in Southampton, but ultimately it's one of those three that I mentioned. And I think Nick Pope also has a great chance, but we're going to go for two Newcastle defenders as well, and I don't think I'd go for a triple up because Nottingham Forest have been fairly impressive in home matches, so Newcastle might struggle and might even concede a goal in that fixture. So I've gone for Kepa Arrizabalaga, and I think he is the best of maybe a relatively bad bunch when you look at all the other upcoming game weeks as well. But I'm fairly confident of a clean sheet for Chelsea, who haven't been that bad defensively all season, and in recent weeks they've been getting some big results, such as against Borussia Dortmund, also a big win against Leicester, and not conceding too many chances or goals. So I think he is the pick of the bunch. Let me know if you disagree. This will be a familiar back five, you could say, for those of you that have seen recent wildcard and free hit team videos, but there's still quite a few changes. So Zinchenko and Trippier remain, and I think they are great options. I think Trippier goes without saying, despite his mistake against Wolves, he got an assist in that game, and he's been so consistent over the course of the season. Yes, in recent weeks, his performances and also the bonus points and all these clean sheets have dried up, but I'm still fairly confident that he's going to get some over the next 2 or 3 game weeks, and even up until the end of the season. Newcastle have had a bit of a blip, but now with everyone back, and although you could say Nick Pope just coming back from suspension as well, he also is very lucky to not get a red card against Wolves and conceding a penalty in that game. But Trippier, it goes without saying, he is the best defender in the game, although in recent weeks there's definitely a debate, and you could argue that from now until the end of the season, Trippier might not be the best defender despite him having the most points, and he will probably end up having the most by the end. Now with Zinchenko, you have the likes of Gabriel, who I've always highlighted as the one that has the most attacking threat in terms of scoring goals. Gabriel is now actually the first defender to reach 10 Premier League goals in the last 3 seasons, with that goal against Fulham, a really important one to put Arsenal in the lead. But I still prefer Zinchenko for the bonus points and the assist threat, and Zinchenko is integral to how Arsenal build up the play, and in recent weeks he's been the best Arsenal defender in terms of bonus points, FPL points, and overall. So I would probably go for Zinchenko still, but Gabriel is still a good option against Crystal Palace. Saliba, Ben White, they're all pretty decent, and I would expect that to be the back four from now until the end of the season. There might be 1 or 2 kind of circumstances or 1 or 2 exceptions, but I ultimately think that will be the back four for pretty much every single game. You've got the likes of Tomiyasu and Tierney ready to come off the bench as well, but Zinchenko for me is still my favourite, but it's very difficult to separate those 4 Arsenal defenders. I've also gone for Fabian Schär because he has the most goal scoring threat from Newcastle defenders, and I would probably back Newcastle to ultimately keep the clean sheet, but I think it will be a tough game for them, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was a 0-0 against Nottingham Forest. And Ben Chilwell has been incredible in the last few game weeks. Now I think he could be rested at some point, whether now in game week 28 or in 29, but I think he's worth the risk. He has a high ceiling. He scored a great goal against his former club Leicester, and he has the quality, I think. Playing in a back three, I think that brings out the best in the likes of Ben Chilwell and Reece James, and so long as he stays fit, I think Ben Chilwell is a great option on the wild card as well, which we'll discuss in an upcoming video as well. The last defender is Ben Davies. Unfortunately, we'll have to bench one of these 5 defenders, and you'll see later on using FPL.team, I'll show you the starting 11, the captaincy, and the bench order. But Ben Davies facing Southampton away, I think, is a decent choice. Spurs have been very inconsistent in recent weeks, and even against Forest, where they won 3-1, they conceded a goal towards the end of the game and also conceded a penalty, which ultimately Forster did save. So I think Davis is the best of a bad bunch, I'd say, at Spurs. He's been getting quite a few points and assists recently, but Spurs have been so inconsistent and they've been losing quite a lot of games in recent weeks. But that is the back five. Let me know if there's any other defenders you would consider, but I think this is the best five you can pick on the free hit. I'll be completely honest, I don't think there's a great looking midfield, and it's not something I would like to have in the long term, but on the free hit, I would start a midfield three, and you can probably guess by now which three those would be. But Martinelli is the most informed Arsenal midfielder in recent weeks, and he's got a great record against Crystal Palace. He scored in the reverse fixture in Game Week 1, and I have a lot of confidence in him delivering the goods as well. But Martin Odegaard is another one that could do fantastically well this week. Now, in years gone by, I think Heung-min Son would have been a no-brainer inclusion in this free hit team, but he's had a poor season, let's be quite frank, and despite him scoring 4 goals against Southampton at St Mary's a few years ago, I just don't see that happening once again. I'm happy to be proven wrong, of course, and if you want to take a punt on someone that obviously has the quality but hasn't quite shown it just yet, then Heung-min Son would be it. But I think the most reliable three on the free hit in terms of the midfield would be Saka, Martinelli / Odegaard, and James Maddison. If you don't go for an Arsenal defender, then I would highly recommend considering a third Arsenal midfielder, whether you go for Trossard, who got a hat-trick of assists in the first half against Fulham, or Martin Odegaard, who's the best for bonus points and double-digit returns. You have plenty of choice when it comes to the Arsenal midfielders, and you have also some choices in the defence to pick from as well. And in the long term, I'd highly recommend an Arsenal defender, but bear in mind, if you are wildcarding or want to get Arsenal defenders or players in general, their fixtures turn very soon, and that's something you also want to navigate and bear in mind. And they also don't have a double in 29, but ultimately, they are a really good way of covering Blank Gameweek 28. Now, James Maddison is facing Brentford, and Maddison hasn't been in great form recently. He came back from an injury just a few weeks ago, and since then it hasn't really been working out for him unless they've been absolutely shocking. But I still think James Maddison is the best of a bad bunch, and he's got over 100 points in FPL this season, and I'd expect him to do well in this fixture. And he's also a great option for double Game Week 29 as well. Bailey and Jensen are just there to fill the bench, but they're decent cheap options who have a fixture in 28 that you may consider starting as well. I believe Jensen is the best Brentford midfielder, and whilst I'm not a big fan of Brentford midfielders, I think Whistle will be a great option if he got more consistent minutes, but I still think Jensen is fairly decent considering his price and all other factors. So this would be the midfield 5. It's not particularly great, to be quite frank, and I think we definitely feel the absence of the Brighton, Man City and Man United midfielders that would easily fill this kind of 5-man midfield, but it's still pretty decent, all things considered, and it should do really well in Blank Gameweek 28. The forward line was the easiest part of this team to fill up. I think these are the 3 standouts, and you have a few alternatives like Iheanacho or even Isak, who looked impressive in Game Week 27, but I would go for these 3, and because you already have Maddison to cover Leicester in general, I think that is enough. But Ivan Toney, he's been a very frustrating player in recent weeks. As I've said, since the World Cup, he's been a bit inconsistent, and a few of his returns have been fairly lucky, but he still is there sometimes to give you those 9-pointers that you desperately need. He's a great penalty taker, and whenever he does score, he has a great chance of accumulating all 3 bonus points, and that's what I like about him. And over the course of the season, he's been very consistent, it has to be said. Now, Watkins hasn't been consistent for the whole campaign, should we say, but he has been in the last 6-7 game weeks. He scored plenty of goals in that time, and he's arguably the best forward in that time period, and he faces Bournemouth at home next. Now, Bournemouth have been fairly decent. They beat Liverpool 1-0 and gave Arsenal a fright, and ultimately were very unlucky to lose that game in the dying moments of that match. But Watkins should do a decent job here, and he also has a double in 29 for those of you that are considering maybe buying a player that covers 28 and Game Week 29. Would I sell Erling Haaland this week for Ollie Watkins? Yes, I would, and I'll talk about that in the team selection video later this week as well. And Harry Kane, it goes without saying, he's such a consistent player. Even when Spurs struggle, Kane can still deliver the goods and score goals, sometimes get the odd assist, but mainly it's the goals and the bonus points that come with it as well. So this forward line speaks for itself. The midfield looks a bit shaky and not that great, but we're going to go for a 4-3-3 formation. We're going to go now to FPL.team, show you the starting 11, the captaincy, the bench order, and cover a few other points that need to be addressed as well. Unsurprisingly, we have 8.2 million left in the bank. In my case anyway, you're going to have so much money left in the bank, no matter how much team value you have ultimately, because we don't have those premium midfielders or even defenders, you could argue, with Chilwell being the most expensive alongside Kieran Trippier. But I've gone for Kepa Arrizabalaga to start in goal. Forster will be on the bench. We've gone for a back four of Ben Chilwell and a double up in Newcastle defensively with Fabian Schär and Kieran Trippier, with Zinchenko completing the back line, Saka, Martinelli and Maddison. Then we've got Harry Kane, Tony and Ollie Watkins up front. Davis's first sub. This is a bit debatable. You could go for Bailey or Jensen instead, but that's the way I've ordered the bench, with Bailey second and Jensen third. Let me know your thoughts on this free hit team. In terms of the captaincy, this is the biggest conundrum left, and for me there are 3 or 4 players that I would consider for the captaincy, and they include Harry Kane, who is ultimately the captain right now and he takes the cake, but the others include Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli and Ollie Watkins, surprisingly, at home to Bournemouth. But I think I'd probably order in that way, with Saka or Martinelli being in second place and Ollie Watkins in 4th position. Let me know how you would order the captaincy this week, because quite frankly there aren't many standouts. The kind of usual consistent players like Rashford and Erling Haaland with such a high ceiling aren't present, and I think Harry Kane is the most consistent of those available. But you could also argue that maybe an Arsenal midfielder have a high ceiling at home to Crystal Palace, who haven't won a single Premier League game in 2023 so far, but Arsenal tend to struggle against Crystal Palace in recent years, and whilst Spurs are struggling, I still expect them to firmly beat Southampton by a goal or 2 at least, and I think Harry Kane, even one return would be enough for an 8 or 9 pointer. So it's going to be tricky to decide the captaincy. I think that's the kind of last thing I need to settle on for my own team, and James Maddison I think could definitely burst into life, and maybe him blanking in recent weeks could be a blessing in disguise for those of you looking to buy him in, because his ownership is only around 5 or 6%, and maybe those points in recent weeks will put people off from buying him, and I think he's a great option once he's fully fit and in form, despite Leicester being an awful team this season. But that is the starting 11. That is the best free hit team. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. And be sure to let me know about anything else you want covered in future videos down in the comment section below. There's going to be a best wildcard team video, also a team selection, and anything else that you may want on this channel. Also keep an eye out for the reaction stream and the deadline streams coming up. Remember, we have a Friday deadline this time, so don't miss it. Be sure to wake up on time and all of that. I know it's very difficult for some of you because you are all around the world, and it is very tricky sometimes to navigate these deadlines, which ultimately are at absolutely ridiculous times for some of you. But thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe for new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes. Let's keep on pushing towards 20,000 subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check the links in the description below for the Patreon, the channel memberships, the Discord server, the FPL League, and also to Sorare, another fantasy game which I'd highly recommend to you, especially if you want something a bit different to FPL as well. And I wish you all the best of luck for Blank Gameweek 28 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you in the upcoming streams as well.